Hello and welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the podcast show where I interview the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate and motivate others to make the world a better place. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Saheb Youssef Bakhsh, and I hope that I'm pronouncing the last names right there.
Close enough, Leila. So it's Bakhsh, but that's fine.
Thank you for letting me off on that. Saheb is an international leader with a huge array of experience, both across corporate organisations, but also charitable organisations. He's currently operating as the head of Tania Group of companies over in Singapore, but formerly he's also worked for a number of other businesses in very senior positions. In addition to holding his current role, he also has hosted and founded the Create the Edge podcast, where he speaks with inspirational individuals all around the world and finds out about their personal innovation stories to provide competitive and sustainable business advantage. As well as that, Saheb has also been the Goodwill Ambassador for the Global Goodwill Ambassador Association, and he's relationship managed a number of other opportunities along the way. Welcome to the show, Saheb.
It's my absolute pleasure, Leila, and thank you so much for inviting me onto your amazing podcast. So I really, really appreciate it, and I'm grateful to be able to have an opportunity to speak with you and just have a real unscripted conversation.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for being here. And it's great to actually meet you kind of in person, in inverted commas, because I have known you. I feel I know you actually very well. And that is the wonder of social media these days and LinkedIn. Because for all of our listeners who are tuning in today, whether it be on YouTube or whether it be via Apple or one of your other favorite podcast channels, is Saheb is actually prolific on LinkedIn. He's on LinkedIn all the time. He's bounding full of energy. Kind. He talks about a lot of really, really key subjects, especially around humanistic-led leadership, which is something that is very, very close to my heart, given that I'm so passionate about diversity and inclusion. But it's great to actually meet you today because we've never actually spoken properly over the phone. And so for me, it's really good to actually meet you in person and for you to be able to maybe share with our listeners a little bit more about you and what you're doing at the moment.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more. And this is the power and the beauty of LinkedIn, because interestingly, I mean, even though my LinkedIn journey hasn't been for a long time, I have made some amazing connections from all around the world. And I've been on social media for a little while, mainly on Facebook for a little while prior, but that's only for close friends and relatives, so to speak. But through LinkedIn, I have literally found new meaning to the hashtag friends like family, because there have been so many people who have shared amazing portions of their life, especially through the podcast that I do, which is Create the Edge, and we've had the opportunity to meet with some amazing thought leaders, so which has basically given me the opportunity to have certain learnings which you would never be able to get from even a 5-year university degree, so to speak. So it's all about, you mentioned a very, very important thing, Leila. It's about humanizing interactions. Now, a lot of people might think, what do you mean by humanizing interactions? I mean, interactions need to be humanized anyways. Yes and no, but it's all about being able to communicate in a way that other people are able to understand the essence of your message. Because, you can, it's the same sort of aspect or the same difference to a certain extent of being a good listener and being a good active listener. There is a fine line between it, but that is the line which makes all the difference. So, I mean, communication is great, but you need to be able to communicate eloquently and coherently. Otherwise your message will literally get lost in the noise, so to speak. And that's what I do. I've always, I come from a science background, actually. Like in school, I was a through and through science major, so physics, chemistry, and computer science. I was scheduled to actually go into mechatronical engineering and robotics. But lo and
Wow.
behold, I know. So I still do have, some of my sort of letters from universities in the UK as well as in the US. But certain things happened in my personal life at that moment, and I was destined to actually go down under to Australia. And boy, I mean, that was the best decision of my life. I mean, I'm Indian. I left the country when I was 17 years old, and I was in Australia for about 12 years, almost 12 years. And I consider myself to be, half Aussie. And a lot of people actually say the same, because I've got a pretty unusual name, Leila, as you would well imagine. I think I'm the only person who's got my name in the world, which is interesting. It comes up better on Google searches, I guess. But that is but it's just been such an amazing journey, and my love affair with Australia started when I was 14 years old. And it's just continued till now, even though I'm no longer in Australia at this present moment. I've been in Singapore. I am in Singapore at this moment, but I absolutely love Australia. I've been in Melbourne for 11 and a half years, and it's just been the most amazing, journey and the portion of my life. So what I've always done, so getting back to your question, I was a full science major, and then in Australia, I went into finance and accounting. So, and after that, I've never actually worked in the field that I've studied in, which is very common for a lot of people around the world. However, I've always worked for non-banking financial institutions, but I've always been in the relationship management department, because somehow, somewhere, I just feel very, very comfortable in front of people, talking with people, getting to find out their why, what makes them tick, what are their real needs and requirements. I love building, nurturing, and maintaining lifelong relationships, and that's what I specialize in. And I do that through an opportunity for me to be able to actually create with my clients and with the businesses that I work with on a consulting basis, down the line, I mean, in the past as well as now at this present moment, is I create that safe space where I'm not judging what they're doing, but I'm actually trying to figure out how I can actually be a client partner and hold their hand along the journey of how, what they're doing at this present moment, and what they need to do in the future to be able to get to where they actually want to be. So basically, I show people how to align their actions with their vision and mission to actually obtain and reach their purpose. So
this is so oh no, sorry to interrupt you there. I was just saying, this is so interesting, and I can tell from obviously meeting with you now in person, and obviously having watched your videos, that you're a real people person, very, very naturally comfortable building relationships. Do you think having such an interesting multicultural background has really helped you be able to do that? Because to me, when I'm watching your podcast and I'm watching some of the work that you do, you're speaking to all different types of people from around the world and connecting on this human level, which actually, despite the fact that all these people from different places with different experiences, it's always going back to that humanistic side. But has it helped you living and working in all these different places? Because you've got an Aussie twang, but you're very articulately spoken, but then you're Indian, and then you're working in Singapore. I think that is fantastic, and it kind of resonates with me, because I feel I'm quite the same. Am I Chinese? Am I British? Am I, lots and lots of different dimensions to it all.
I know exactly where you're coming from, and it's a fantastic question that you've asked, and I firmly believe that there are a couple of things in life which actually make up for the character that you actually portray in the future, and those have a lot to do with what you who you surround yourself with, and that is so important. Like, from a very young age, I've obviously had the top education back in India, which obviously follows the British curriculum. So I've always actually spoken like this. A lot of people may don't believe that. They think that my accent is something which has been which I've imbibed into myself after I moved to Australia. But no, I've actually spoken like this. Maybe a bit more of the Australian twang may have come in, but I've always spoken proper British English. So it's interesting because a lot of people have preconceived notions and they wear spectacles of bias, as I like to call them, right? Now, and the worst part of that is because, number one, I don't have an anglicized name. I'm brown. So, I mean, I can say that, and so can you, honestly, because we're both Asian, right? So, we are always just cast into that box of being Asian. So, and honestly speaking, it's a very interesting thing. Like when I was in Australia, I have been mistaken, over the phone to be Irish at one
Really?
point. I don't know. I'm like, that is very strange. But, I've been mistaken to be South African. I've been mistaken to be British. So, but I've never been mistaken to be Indian. And, it was very, very interesting because I used to do a lot of face-to-face client work regarding property investment and advisory and tax advisory and superannuation planning when I was in Australia. So when I used to actually speak to the clients over the phone and I used to actually go out and speak to them in person, either with one of my team members who I was training or something along those lines, when they used to open the door, they would literally, on most occasions, they would be like, are we expecting the right person? And my opening line used to be, sorry, mate, I was just baked too long in the oven to start with. And that would just elicit, just laughter from them. So, I mean, that was exactly,
Oh
exactly.
my
Just that's how
goodness.
you reacted. Just how you reacted.
My good. That is that is kind of hilarious. And whilst we're on the subject of hilarious, inappropriate jokes, I will share this with you as well. And
Sure.
hopefully we don't lose listeners from this. but I had the exact same thing as you, Saheb. So because, well, I suppose mine's the other way around, actually. My name, Leila Mackenzie, or Leila Mackenzie Dallas. Now people presume I'm Scottish. I've never spoken a word of Chinese in my life because I was adopted and by British parents, and I actually I grew up in a Western school in Hong Kong and then in Yorkshire, actually. But when I'm speaking to people over the phone, and certainly in my other business, which is kind of exec search, and you're speaking to a lot of people over the phone, they presume, Mackenzie, very British. You would never know that I am, as you've said. You said you're brown. I'm saying I'm yellow. I sound like a banana, yellow on the outside and white on the inside. But they would never, know. And so kind of,
Correct.
When you were talking about this instance of kind of showing up and opening the door and all of a sudden it's like, oh, or kind of looking behind you as if expecting someone else.
Yep.
And then when they hear your voice, they realize, that is Saheb, or that is Leila.
Correct.
It's quite funny. But then you kind of find yourself, and I know whether you get this, you find yourself then explaining your back history and how you are where you are, or where you were from originally. Because that's another question. Oh, where are you from? Which is nothing offensive at all in that, but then it's how do you identify? Are you, from India, or is it, well, I feel Australian, How do you feel about that?
Well, see, it's a very good point that you've actually just raised, because there are a couple of connotations to that, because people will ask you, so what's your background? And I'm like, I'm originally from India. And people are like, oh, but you don't have the accent. And see, I can actually again say another slightly offensive one, but which a lot of people will be able to relate to. Because I'm Indian, I can do it. I can say it, right? So because I've always been the token Indian at all the places that I worked in Australia to a certain extent. But when people used to actually say that, but you don't sound Indian. Now, what is the proverbial Indian accent? It is the accent, unfortunately, which comes with Apu from The Simpsons, right? Now, not every Indian speaks that way. They don't. And that is what a lot of people don't realize. And it's similar to, like, I mean, every single place in the world, you've got different accents. You've got different levels of education, perhaps, different levels of people having access, or they've seen the world to a certain extent. And I've had the privilege, and I'm grateful to my mother, who's a single mother, when she raised me. And I'm very, very grateful to her, because she actually made sure that I always got the best of education from get-go. And I've had the opportunity to actually visit so many places around the world: Europe, America, Australia, obviously, lots of parts of the APAC region, etc. So I've seen so many cultures, I've seen so many countries, and I guess to a certain extent that did help me to be able to imbibe good things about people and surroundings. Because what most people do is that they do imbibe, but they generally tend to imbibe the negative elements and the negative aspects. So, and that's what we really need to do. We need to actually be able to imbibe and harness the goodness that people have around them. All you need to do is just look, right? And there have been occasions where I've had racial slurs in the past just because I'm brown, but that doesn't bother me. That doesn't bother me because the moment you let someone else get under your skin, you've lost. Simple as that. So you just have to have that perseverance, that grit, and that resilience to a certain extent to have confidence in who you are as a person. And that is the most important, in my opinion. So, coming back to your original question. So I've been really well traveled. I've always studied on the British curriculum growing up in India. And then obviously I had my bachelor's and my postgrads. I've got 3 Australian degrees. So I've spent like 11 years in Australia. So that comes back to another thing. When a lot of people ask you, what is your mother tongue? Right? And if someone asks me what my mother tongue is, now I mean, officially it is Bengali because I'm from Calcutta. So where Bengali, which is one of the Indian languages, is my mother tongue. Okay, maybe that was the first, language which I heard when I was growing up. However, I think your mother tongue can change over life because I feel your mother tongue is the language in which you think in. I don't think in Bengali. I think in English. I always have. So I'm not like thinking in Bengali and then translating things at the back of my head to actually, say things in front to other people around me. So I think what is your mother tongue? Mother tongue is something, basically to a certain extent, is the immediate language which you automatically, resonate with. And yes, I speak fluent Bengali. I speak fluent Hindi. I can speak Urdu. I can't read or write Urdu. I obviously am very fluent in English. So, and that actually has given me the opportunity to be able to connect with a lot of people around the world. And that is also so important, Leila. It's not just also about, how many places you visit or how many situations you've encountered. I feel it is so important to be bilingual in today's society. It is very, very important to be bilingual. English, absolutely. You need to know English because that is the general language of transactions around the world in most locations. But you need to learn another language. Now, I really, really want to learn Mandarin, right? Because if I learn Mandarin, then I would literally be able to speak to 90% of the world's population.
Well, I'm feeling really bad now because I only speak English. And do you know what? Maybe this podcast is a sharp prod in the back to say, go and learn another language, because I really do wish that I could speak another language. And you're right, I do think it really helps you appreciate the fact that there are such incredibly different cultures out there, especially as an English speaker. It appears almost not arrogant, that's probably the wrong word to use, but as a Brit, sometimes I have to stop myself when I go abroad and remind myself that not everyone speaks English. And so appreciating the difficulty that it takes to learn these other languages, I think is, I think it's key, really. And I think that's very good advice, to go and learn another language. I confess, I did try and learn Mandarin once upon a time, but I didn't do too well at it. In fact, it's rather embarrassing being with my husband, because he is a white American Greek who can speak fluent Mandarin. So if we go into a Chinese restaurant and they automatically...
They expect you to speak Mandarin, but you don't.
They look at me and I look at them with goggle eyes. I can perhaps put on my best fake Chinese accent and read out in a Chinese accent, what is on the Chinese menu. But other than that, it's really, it's all very British. So I'm feeling a little bit bad now, and definitely are making me think I ought to learn another language too.
No, that's fantastic. See, I mean, this is something, you know, from a real life experience as well. I think languages are so important. It actually breaks down barriers. It just breaks the ice. Like I remember in 1999, at the turn of the millennium, I actually went on a Europe tour with my mom, and we went to parts of France and Italy, and a lot of people actually said that, especially in France now. I've got amazing friends who are French, so and they've agreed with me as well that a lot of people think that, you know, if you actually go out and speak to a French person in English, they may be a little bit hesitant in replying to you, right? So all that I learned in French was "Parlez-vous anglais?" Do you speak English? Right? Just that little phrase, right? Just got us off, got us off to flying colors with, at every place where we had a conversation with anyone, with a person who was native French. And believe me, they speak English. They do. Maybe not, 100% level of accuracy, but they do speak English, and enough, and more than enough on most occasions. And that is what I think, sometimes languages can really, really be like a catalyst to break down barriers in communication. I'm a big believer that, language is all about communicating one's wants, and that's it. And what you want to actually sort of, get through to the other person across the table from you. Language is not about whether you are fluent in a particular language or anything along those lines, because we really need to, especially in this more of an inclusive world that we're moving towards, we need to break down these barriers as to, that person doesn't speak fluent English. So what? He could be very fluent in a language that you don't understand. Right?
Indeed. And also, I think when you make that effort, like you said, that small sentence there that you took over when you went to France, it demonstrates that you care enough to actually understand something from another person's perspective. And I think that is absolutely critical. That real, like you say, is breaking down those barriers. It's showing that you care, and that caring nature and that feeling of, almost feeling like you're trying at least to belong to belong to someone else's culture.
It's just a respect factor, right? It's a respect factor. I mean, respect is something that you can only get if you give in the first place.
Exactly. And respect is universal, right? Humanistic-led leadership should be a worldwide phenomenon. And I know that you are very, very passionate about that human piece. And I think that is, that is probably why you are so good at communicating with people, because actually it really doesn't matter, but it's very, very easy to have preconceptions of a person when just looking at them or seeing a picture. Actually, forgetting about all of that, or at least trying to ignore what our biases would be, because naturally I guess we all do have biases, but trying to look through them and look purely through to the internal person as opposed to the external is absolutely what it's all about, to really have that feeling of deep connectivity.
You're absolutely right. And that is what we should all try to, as leaders, right, around the world. We really need to be able to break down those external facades and walls that society, to a certain extent, have brought up, right? And, I'm a big believer that, the only religion that one should practice is the religion of humanity. And that is so important. And religion of inclusion, where, you don't see another person as being different from you, because we all bleed red. Simple as that, right? So, and that is important. And as soon as more and more people around the world are going to be able to understand that and appreciate that and actually live by that, this world is going to be a much better place to live in, honestly. So, yeah.
Indeed. And that's a really nice philosophical way to put it, because we do, at the end of the day, we're flesh and bones, we do all bleed red. And so if you took away any kind of external factor, then we would be connecting with the human heart and the soul, and that is absolutely it. You know, we might all have our different religions, beliefs, thoughts, ways that we've grown up, etc., etc. But actually humanity is completely universal. And I think the more that is discussed and the more that barriers are broken down, you know, and I think through the wonders of social media and the fact that you're in Singapore and I'm in lovely Manchester, which is sunny for once today, it is, and we can connect like this, I think is great.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. And that's the beauty of the human connection, right? Because you can only create those connections through communication if you have respect. As soon as you start respecting the other person for who they are, what they do, and you yourself are genuine, authentic, and have integrity, that's all it takes. That's all it takes. So, especially as a business leader, that's all it takes. You know, you just have to be yourself. You just have to try to always have the other person's best intentions in mind. And the moment you start doing that, you know, you just see the magic unfold. Simple as that. It just breaks down barriers of communication. It just breaks down barriers of bias. You know, people will be able to then relate to the person who you are, and it's so true. People, we know and we can actually understand when you're actually speaking to someone whether that person's actually got your best intentions at heart or not. You know, we are born with that kind of an ability to be able to understand and feel, you know, how the person is, I guess, intrinsically, you know, within ourselves. So that's what we need to harness as business leaders, because it's a business of the heart. Because, you know, if you take out the heart component, and the heart component, I also mean people, right? You know, all the businesses, especially with technology, with blockchain and AI and machine learning coming in from all over the world, they were all created by us humans. So it's not about sort of, you know, replacing humans. It's about assisting. So, you know, technology should be faced or should be looked into as something which actually assists humans in making better decisions to a certain extent. So it's a business of the heart. You know, the person behind a machine will always need to be there. The person behind decisions will always need to be there. So it's a business of the heart.
I could not agree with you more. And what a really lovely, lovely way to kind of come to the close of today's podcast. And I'd love to do another podcast with you actually around AI, because, oh my goodness, I could talk to you about that as well forever and a day, because I am a true believer, like you are, that actually emotional intelligence is going to be the most valuable commodity of the future, in part fueled by AI.
Couldn't agree more. So, you know, as Jack Ma says, right, you know, EQ is the most important moving forward. So, and that's what people should focus on, if they really want to, you know, break down those barriers and be able to, you know, break through the glass ceiling of potential which society has shackled upon their minds. So.
Indeed. And just to summarise for all of our fantastic listeners who are tuning in today via YouTube, on the Dial Global YouTube channel, or on our or through their podcast apps, whether it be Apple or Spotify, just going to do a quick summary, because I've learned a lot and I've really enjoyed today's podcast with you, Saheb. It's been fantastic. Hopefully it's inspired a lot of people about learning and the importance of understanding different cultures, different international perspectives, and hopefully inspired people to maybe think about taking up another language to supplement their existing knowledge and skill sets. But I really love the piece that you talked about, kind of humanizing these interactions, that the heart should be at the center of business. I also love the way that you were talking about the fact that communication is critical, so that people can understand the message, really understanding the wants, so that we can move forward in a positive way. You also mentioned being a really good active listener. I think that's so important, as you say, for driving relationships, and clearly you've been very, very good at it. So those out there who are tuning in, you know, do make sure that you are thinking and understanding, trying to lead with the heart, so you can understand the people and the customers or the colleagues that you're speaking to, so that you can really more adequately and eloquently explain and understand and converse with them. And finally, if you've been affected by any of today's episode and you want to maybe talk about kind of, more about multiculturalism, or you may be struggling being a little bit different and you've been through life changes or moved countries and what have you, then please do get in touch. Please do get in touch with us. Please do reach out. No, Saheb is such a humanistic and purpose-led guy. I know that if you got in touch and said, you know what, I've had a similar experience, I'd really like to chat to you about it, he would be more than willing to welcome you and speak with you about that. So for now, I will say thank you very much, Saheb, for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
It's been such a pleasure, Leila. This is the first time we've actually interacted face to face, and it just felt that we've known each other for years. So
exactly.
Thank you very much for being an amazing podcast host. For just asking the perfect questions. And basically, it's not about asking the questions, it's basically just initiating conversation. And you're brilliant at it. I mean, this is definitely one of the best podcasts that I have attended. So it's just a testament.
Thanks so much.
It's just a testament of the warmth of character that you have as a person. So I wish you all the very best, and I look forward to our interactions moving forward. And I'd like to thank you once again for inviting me on your show, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, bless you. Well, I'll see you hopefully next year in Singapore, but I will tell you more about that afterwards. So for now, my name is Leila Mackenzie, and you've been listening to the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcasts. I will summarize all of the show notes today so that you can find out about anything that has been discussed in today's show with Saheb. Visit www.dialglobal.org/podcast. You can also visit us on YouTube under Dial Global, which stands for Diverse, Inclusive, Aspirational Leaders Global. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to hearing from you next week. Bye for now. Thank you so much for watching the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. Please do feel free to hit the like button below, or if you'd like to receive future notifications, do ping the notification bell here at the side. If you're interested in the audio version only, you can find it on the following streaming platforms. Any extra info and descriptions will be in the links below. Look forward to seeing you soon.